is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And this is the war. This is our World War II.
So I'm Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. That's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I'm joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton, who has not told me any earlier, and he's on the Senate Intel Committee, that the world was ending in 12 years. Senator Cotton, why did you not let us know?
Hey, Hugh, it's good to be on with you. I guess we didn't want to spark worldwide panic that the world would be ending in 12 years.
Well, this changes my choice on on Social Security in a few years. If it's going to be done in 12, I'm definitely going in at 65 instead of 70.
I guess, though, a lot of people are going to have to have those kind of recalculations, Hugh.
What about this is our World War II? I was unaware this was our World War II.
I would say that World War II was our World War II. Look, Hugh, everyone wants to have a healthy environment with clean air and clean water where children can work the land or play in the forest or hunt or fish, and we can all be healthy. There's ways to address these concerns. A lot of people on the left, though, have an ideological bias against very simple solutions to try to reduce carbon emissions, such as building more nuclear power plants. That's the kind of conversation we should be having to address the American people's legitimate desires for a clean, healthy environment.
Absolutely. Nuclear power. Nuclear power.
So much of the radical environmental left is just camouflage for a radical anti-capitalist viewpoint. And, so many people on the left support power sources until they become viable. So nuclear was great until it became viable, and then solar and wind and hydro was great until, it started killing birds with windmills and catching dolphins and traps and so on and so forth. We have to have power to generate new jobs and continue to create more wealth for the American people. Again, the radical environmental left has often thwarted efforts to address the American people's desire for a clean, healthy environment by blocking new nuclear power plants for the last 40 years.
I want to switch subjects. Your buddy, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, you two are good friends. Is he going to run for Senate?
Well, Hugh, you're right that I've known Secretary Pompeo now for about 7 years. He was the very first person to call me and contribute to me as a member of Congress in my first campaign for the House, and we were close friends in the House of Representatives. We talk pretty frequently, usually about his diplomatic efforts or my legislative efforts, but I know that he's flattered that so many of my senators think that he would make a great senator. I certainly believe he would be an outstanding senator. I would hate to see him go as the Secretary of State. He's doing very important work for the president, but I also know that that seat could possibly be competitive. But if Mike Pompeo is the nominee for that Senate seat, it will not be a competitive primary or general election, and the United States Senate will have a great new senator for many years to come.
Do you want him to do it?
That's really a decision for Secretary Pompeo and his wife, Susan, and the president as well. I know that he would have universal support inside the Senate Republican caucus, and I suspect universal support from most Kansans as well. Mike was a very strong politician back in his electoral days, winning contested primaries, beating a congressman that came back to run against him, beating some pretty formidable Democratic opponents as well.
Now, like your new colleague Mitt Romney, he'd have to work hard to keep the total under 80% and make it look like it was a real election. The question is, though, I think he could serve another year as Secretary of State before the filing deadline without violating any law, and just people stay out of the primary. Do you agree with me? He can stay in that job as Secretary of State for another full year.
Well, yeah, Hugh, if I recall, Kansas has something of a late primary, I think maybe sometime in early August. Normally states' filing deadlines for these races are 60 or 90 days for a primary. So I suspect that Secretary Pompeo could serve for maybe all of this year, maybe another 16, 18 months before he would have to make a decision. And given his stature, given his accomplishments as the CIA director and the Secretary of State, and given how beloved he is by the people of Kansas, I believe that he could make a very late decision. And again, were he to run, I can't imagine credible opposition in either the primary or the general election.
Yeah, I would advise everyone thinking about running, don't do that. Let me quickly turn to changing the rules of the Senate. Yesterday, Todd Young, your colleague from Indiana, said it's going to happen next week. We're tired of the delay. We're going to go down to change the time available pre- and post-cloture to debate a nominee. If you go down to 2 hours pre- and post, you'll be able to confirm 15 nominees in the time of one. Is that happening next week?
I hope so, Hugh. I hope that it'll happen very early. We should have done this long ago. The Democrats have abused the rules of the Senate for 2 years to blockade President Trump's judicial nominations and his executive branch nominees. And then what is particularly galling, they turn around and criticize people like Mike Pompeo for not having their undersecretaries and assistant secretaries in place. So your listeners know the situation. There's 30 hours of debate once debate is closed. Now, only in the U.S. Senate, that'd be the standard. But the Democrats would drag out time, so we'd have 30 hours of no debate. There'd be nobody on the floor debating these district judge nominees or some assistant secretary no one's ever heard of, and then they'd pass with almost a unanimous vote. So we should cut that down to 2, 4, 6 hours at most.
2 hours, I hope, but do you think it's happening next week?
The sooner the better, Hugh.
The sooner the better. That's still not a yes or a no, but I'll let you go because I'm out of time. Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure. Remember, if it's 12 years, I need to know about it. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.